Well, on behalf of Heartland Hospice Moose Jaw, I want to welcome you to this virtual palliative hospice care info session. We are so grateful to each of you for joining us today and having an interest in palliative hospice care in our community. And we're so grateful for the compassionate and caring work that you are doing already in the community, because I know a number of you, as you signed in, are involved in healthcare or frontline support people in our community. We are also so grateful for the compassionate and caring work that our palliative care team are doing. It is a labor of love, and they're such a gift, and we're so grateful to have some of them here with us today. Before beginning, in the spirit of truth and reconciliation, I want to acknowledge that we are on Treaty 4 territory. I honor the land and its provision for our body, our mind, and our spirit. And I honor the pain caused generationally to our Indigenous relatives when they were torn from these lands, their lands, and their families. We promise to work as allies on reconciliation, healing, and living in true collaboration. My name is Della Ferguson, and I am the Secretary for Heartland Hospice Board, and I'm the Chair of the Supportive Care Committee. And I'm honored to be here, host here today for this session, and honored to have some of our Heartland Hospice team members here with us, and in our presenter, Dr. Kerri Hetherington, who is on our board executive, and Sarah Bryan, who is also on our board executive. Just a little bit about Heartland Hospice Moose Jaw. We were born from the inspiration of Arlene Koloski in 2013. While courageously facing her end-of-life journey, she recognized the need for hospice palliative care in Moose Jaw. She had the privilege of experiencing her final days in the comfort of her own home, but knew that not everyone would be able to do the same. So in May of 2013, Arlene approached a few of her close friends and acquaintances to advocate for hospice palliative care in Moose Jaw. This group went on to establish an organization dedicated to achieve the dream of hospice palliative care here and surrounding area. And in November of 2014, Heartland Hospice Moose Jaw Incorporated, was officially established as an organization. Today, there's an active board of directors consisting of 12 members that meet monthly to achieve Arlene's and our board's dream of a dedicated hospice palliative care facility in Moose Jaw. Our vision is an end-of-life haven in Moose Jaw for individuals and their families, supported by a circle of compassionate care. Currently, we are in the midst of a capital campaign. It's very exciting to develop hospice space at Pioneer Lodge from the current 1 room to 3 hospice rooms, a family room, and sacred space. It's a $1 million venture, and we're grateful to those who have contributed thus far. And we look forward to more in our community stepping up to support this invaluable initiative. And we are very excited for the renovations to begin. And so for more information on that, I invite you to check out our heartlandhospicemj.ca website. Today's session is born from the questions we find ourselves being asked on a regular basis. What is hospice? How does one access it? What's palliative care? What's the difference between the two? And questions like that. And so we decided to bring the experts to the table, or to the screen as it be, to offer some insights and answers. And so we're recording this, and it will be available on our website and our Facebook page if you want to share it and refer folks to it later. So welcome and thank you, and let's get started. I need to say before our first speaker that unfortunately Tyler Moudry, our palliative community care coordinator, is unable to be here today, as sadly her own dad passed away this week. And so she is immersed in family today. So we send light and love her way. Gratefully, Lynn is going to be covering Tyler's information within her presentation. So thank you for so kindly taking that on. Our first presenter today is Dr. Kerri Hetherington, member of our board executive. Dr. Kerri is a family physician and palliative care doctor, as well as partner to an amazing photographer, our photographer, Andy Hamilton, and a mom to some very precious children. She is homegrown and has such a huge heart for our community. We're so grateful to have her in our community, and we're so grateful to have her here today presenting. So thank you, Dr. Kerri, and welcome. You're muted.
Thanks, Stella. Thank you for having me here today, and it's so great to see so many people on this talk today. So I think I'll start with answering one of those questions that Della posed, and really what is palliative care, and when does somebody access palliative care? I'll start off by saying the term palliative is really a fluid term, and it can mean many different things for different patients and along different parts of their health journey. But I would say the term palliative is really most commonly used when a patient is given a diagnosis of a disease that is deemed to be incurable. And it's going to be a life-limiting illness. So this could be many things, though. The thing that probably pops into people's mind most commonly is a diagnosis of cancer, of some sort of cancer. But it can also be a chronic disease, so a heart failure disease or diseases that affect the heart or the lungs, or diseases that affect the nervous system, like ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease or multiple sclerosis. So there are many things under the umbrella of diseases that can put someone into a quote unquote palliative state. This term could be used as soon as the person is diagnosed with that illness, or, much later down the road of their journey with that illness. But for example, when someone's given a diagnosis of a type of cancer and they're told that it is not curable with any kind of treatment or surgery, they could say, you are now going to be treated in a palliative way, where all treatments and medications are really aimed at controlling your symptoms and making you comfortable. For somebody with more of a chronic disease, so heart failure or COPD, a disease of the lungs, they could live with these illnesses for many, many years and sometimes never even enter a quote unquote palliative phase. But sometimes as they're approaching kind of the end stages of those diseases, that word palliative can then start to come up, where treatments are no longer controlling their illness or their symptoms, and any further treatments, the shift will be kind of more towards providing comfort for that person. So kind of many different things that palliative could be considered. What we do know is over the years, many years ago, when you would use the term palliative, people would automatically think, well, that means that I'm dying or my loved one is dying. But now we know that that is not necessarily what the term palliative means. It just means that our goals of treatment for that person are more so aimed at providing them comfort and symptom control, rather than curing or ending the disease process that is going on. So lots of research is showing that once somebody is diagnosed with, for example, a life-limiting illness, applying an approach that is kind of what we would call palliative is actually is actually very useful for that person, to really try to give them the most comfort and quality of life that they have while living with that illness, trying to control all of their symptoms. And when I say symptoms, meaning most commonly things like pain, nausea or vomiting, shortness of breath, often fatigue, low appetite, things like that. Then other things we look at are their emotional and mental health needs, how they are functioning in their home. Do they need equipment to help them function to the best of their ability while in their home? So it's really a very broad term that really in the end means we are doing everything we can to help this person with their comfort and quality of life while they are still here with us. So then I wanted to talk a little bit about palliative care services in Moose Jaw, and I know Lynn will talk kind of about this as well. From kind of my perspective or the physician's perspective, people will ask, well, how do I access palliative care and when can I access palliative care? In Moose Jaw, our services available, I would kind of split them into two areas. And our palliative care program is really kind of our home care program. And then our other palliative service is kind of the palliative beds and that are offered at Pioneer Lodge. And I think Lynn will speak more specifically as to kind of how someone is accepted into the palliative care program, because I'm not really involved in that part, but I do make referrals. And anybody with a diagnosis of a life-limiting illness can be referred. It's usually, I think the goal was kind of to have it where we think people are in about their last 6 months of life, and Lynn will speak more to this, but I don't think that's a total firm thing, and because we don't always actually know too sometimes. But people can self-refer, they can be referred by a nurse or a physician or other allied healthcare provider, and that can be done through the home care program or the access center. And then I think Lynn can also speak more to kind of exactly which services are offered through that palliative care program. Then the palliative care beds at Pioneer Lodge, people have to be part of the palliative care program to access those beds. We currently have one larger room that is kind of termed our one current hospice room, but then there are other beds in Pioneer Lodge as well. Sometimes we use the beds temporarily when a person needs a little bit more help or assistance in some uncontrolled symptoms, or they're just kind of not doing so well at home, and we will bring them in temporarily and get those symptoms or things under control. And then if their goal is to return home, they sometimes will return home from there. And sometimes people are more so brought into a bed for really care at the end of life. And this is for usually when we're thinking people are in about the last 8 weeks of life. The beds are allotted for 8 weeks of time. When do we think people are going to be in the last 8 weeks of life? Obviously, that's not an exact science, but we have different kind of evidence-based scales and a few medical markers on blood work that we can look at to help us to know when somebody is going to be in that last 8 weeks of life. But really, it's looking at the whole patient and how they're doing and functioning. Are they spending most of their time in bed? Are they still able to take much in orally? Things like that. And that kind of gives us an idea. Sometimes people will come from the hospital into these beds. Sometimes they will come from home into these beds. So I think those are kind of the two big areas of palliative care services that are offered in Moose Jaw. And I think Lynn is going to kind of speak more specifically as to exactly how people are brought onto that program.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Kerri. And what we're going to do is after Lynn presents, we will have opportunities for questions and answers with both Dr. Kerri and with Lynn. So thank you so much for sharing that. And so next we have Lynn McKenzie. And Lynn is clinical manager at Pioneer Lodge, and she is also a very compassionate soul. And I was so honored to get to know her while she was in the midst of her internship and got to see her love in action as she meets with people. And I know that that's just grown. So Lynn is a very proud mom and grandma as well, and has lots of pictures. And so love watching that family grow. We're so honored to have you here today, Lynn, with us to present.
Yes. Hello, as Della said, I'm Lynn McKenzie, and I'm one of the clinical managers at Pioneer Lodge, where the palliative hospice beds are located. During this presentation, I'll kind of use the words hospice, palliative care, end-of-life care interchangeably, even though there is a small difference. It just kind of often these words are used to mean the same thing. And as already mentioned, I will try to speak to Tyler Moody's part of the presentation on how to get onto the palliative care program and how to access end-of-life beds on Memory Lane. For a person to get onto the palliative care program, a referral, well, they can be self-referred or by their physician. And the palliative care coordinator and the nurse B palliative care coordinator just look at different criteria, and they try to look at the last 6 months of life, just because of the capacity of the program to be able to follow clients. And so then once they are approved, Tyler, the palliative care coordinator, will go out and do an assessment and just get them onto the program and get nursing involved, and the other kind of get equipment and other supports. And so that's how they get them onto the program. And the end-of-life beds, again, on the transition unit, which is what we call Memory Lane, is located in Pioneer Lodge, which is a long-term care facility. Memory Lane has convalescence, pain and symptom management, and end-of-life beds. The convalescent beds are for clients needing strengthening, like therapy and things like that, before they get home, for whatever home is to them, whether it's an actual house or a personal care home, or if it's going to be into a long-term care facility. The palliative clients are the ones that utilize the pain and symptom management beds that Dr. Hetherington spoke to. And again, the end-of-life beds are for clients in the last 8 weeks of their life. There is a total of 14 transition beds on Memory Lane. And as Della and Dr. Hetherington both spoke to, one of the 14 beds has been renovated and furnished by Heartland Hospice, which of course they still continue to support with their care packages. There's a coffee machine in the room and other resources that they have for the families and the client. The beds on Memory Lane are not designated to any certain type. So at any given time, we can have no palliative clients, which has not happened for months, or in recent weeks, we've had up to 9 pain and symptom management and end-of-life clients on Memory Lane. So it's been quite busy. A person is not required to be on the palliative program anymore to access end-of-life care on memory lane, but they need to be on the palliative care program to access pain and symptom management beds, just so the palliative care team can assess more accurately probably for the pain and symptom beds. And the criteria for end-of-life beds, as mentioned earlier, is 8 weeks or less. If a person is already in long-term care, they cannot access an end-of-life bed as they already have a bed in the system. Once a person has been assessed for end-of-life bed by the palliative care team or by the physician, the palliative care coordinator or the transition coordinators at the hospital will complete the required information assessment and send the request to System Flow Coordination Center. And that's a whole different presentation there. they just are the system that controls the beds in the province, and so they know where all the different beds are. So the request goes to them. Once that's been approved, the request will come to us, and then they make arrangements to come to Moose Jaw or to the transition unit. Sorry, I kind of just got off track talking about system flow. Sorry about that. Anyway, System Flow tries to keep the palliative clients in Moose Jaw, like our end of life, they won't get sent out. And pain and symptom they try to keep here as well. But again, we have limited beds, so sometimes people might have to be in the hospital longer, or if possible, if we can put supports in place, maybe stay at home for a few more days. So they try to keep them in Moose Jaw. People do have the option to stay at home for end-of-life care as well with the support of the palliative care team. The team includes the palliative coordinator, Tyler, and the nurse B, palliative coordinator, which is Nadine. And they have RNs and LPNs that cover as well, and their continuing care aides, your occupational therapist, the physiotherapist, they have a pharmacist on the team, Dr. Hetherington, and also supports of other family physicians as well. The palliative home care team, our palliative home care also has a whole supply of equipment that can be put in the home, like Dr. Hetherington mentioned, from beds to walkers to wheelchairs to ceiling tracks to you name it. They have, and then they have incontinence supplies. They have nutritional products. They've got quite a bit of stuff that they support their people at home. And and they have 24-hour, 7 days a week access to a nurse as well, and CCAs. So they are well supported in their home if that's what people choose. And hospice, the hospice palliative care on memory lane, as I had mentioned earlier, is very highly utilized. In the past 2 years since I've been in memory at Pioneer Lodge, I've seen an increase in the number of clients accessing pain and symptom management beds and end-of-life beds. When the one hospice room is occupied, though, other clients requiring pain and symptom management or end-of-life will be in one of the other 13 beds. Our families have access to the family room located across from the hospice room, which is furnished by Heartland Hospice. It's got a couch and it's got a couple of chairs that lay down into beds, and so people can stay in there. If and not everybody or not all the clients and families that are in the larger room always access the room across from them, because they've got recliners and stuff in there as well in the bigger room. So sometimes our clients and families that are in the smaller room, if they need the space, they go into the family room. And because of COVID, the family room is not shared by others. That is getting better because the rules are getting better. So yeah, so we have that for them. And so the hospice room, it was actually 2 rooms made into 1. So again, it's a bigger space for clients and families. It's furnished with 2 recliners. It's got a TV. It's got the coffee machine, as I had mentioned. The recliners are not just used by the families and visitors. There's times where actually we've got somebody in there right now that she spends lots of time in the recliner, so it's really nice. And sometimes we have clients who cannot even sleep in the beds because of either pain or breathing issues or stuff, so that they need the recliners to sleep in. The bigger room, like I said, is more accommodating for families to spend the days and nights. We also accommodate families in the smaller rooms if they choose to stay at night. We actually have lawn chairs, which I know that might not sound comfortable, but they fit in our smaller rooms, and families actually say they are a lot more comfortable than you would think. So people do have the option to stay the night in the smaller rooms as well. As well as Heartland Hospice is also in the last phases of creating the Serenity Garden outside of Memory Lane. They've managed to take a corner lot that was just grass and some overgrown trees and turn it into a Serenity Garden. Last spring, a beautiful fountain appeared. It was kind of funny. We all got, and we were looking out the window like, holy smokes, where did that big thing come from? Like, it's really beautiful. Then plants appeared and more plants. Adela's been out there, was out there all summer, spring, out there planting stuff, and other volunteers. Then a stamped cement pad, shortly after that a gazebo, then furniture, lights, and more plants. I wanted to share a story with you with what I witnessed last spring and summer as this space was being created. We had a palliative client who was a younger gentleman. He was a single man, and he spent almost 8 weeks in this space. At first, when there was just a cement pad with the beginning parts of the gazebo, he would sit out there in rain and shine, and it really was. If it was pouring rain, he was sitting on the cement pad before there was anything else there under the gazebo. I would see him out there during the day, and in the evenings when I walked by with the dog, he was out there still. As the Heartland Hospice board members and volunteers began to build the rest of the gazebo, the client was out in the middle of it all, either helping as he could, whether it was holding the railings while the volunteers were screwing in whatever they needed to, the railings and the other parts, or just standing there supervising the job. He would try to roll up the hoses for them, the extension cords, whatever it was. This client was no longer to be at home, and his aging mom was so grateful that her son had the Memory Lane staff, the room, and the Serenity Garden to spend his last weeks in. We also had another palliative client with us for many weeks last summer before she was able to return home. She spent her days outside in the Serenity Garden under the gazebo, reading her books. She would lay down had her feet up, reading her books. The staff even took out her lunches to her, and she ate outside as well. There was not a time that you would look out into the Serenity Garden last summer that you didn't see people out there visiting. It was just a lovely sight. It was full all the time. And then in June, Heartland Hospice put on their first memorial service in the Serenity Gardens. It was a special night. Families, friends, board members, and staff came together to remember the people that we lost the previous year. It couldn't have been a more beautiful night out. People even commented how beautiful it was, the way the sun was hitting the area. It was a special night. And it gave the opportunity for families to come back and share their stories with others and remember their loved one, and to see the staff that took care of their loved one. So it was a wonderful night. So yeah. And lastly, I just wanted to share that they say things in life come full circle, and I couldn't agree more. Even that I'm sitting here looking at Della's name, as she said, her and I, our paths crossed probably, oh my goodness, 19 years ago. This year, yeah. Anyways, I did my mini practicum with Della. So, anyways, hospice palliative care is very near and dear to my heart because of a significant loss I experienced 23 years ago. I know the importance of having a space in our community for the people to go for end-of-life care when they cannot be at home. Not only a space, but to have people who will understand, support, and provide the care for them and their families and friends. People to meet them where they're at and to walk with them through their journey. Families will not forget that person who listened to them or took the time to explain what was happening to their loved one, got them that cup of coffee or that warm blanket, or just took care of the needs of their loved one who was dying. Thanks to Heartland Hospice Moose Jaw, we have this space to care for our members of our community when it's needed. I look forward to the next phases of the renovations and the new hospice room and space and the Serenity Garden. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lynn. I love the visualizations you've given us all the way through there, and I'm so grateful to that. We have people like yourself and Kerri who are frontline giving that kind of compassionate care. It's just a profound gift. And as you were sharing, you spoke about the size of this hospice room. My mom was in the end room on Memory Lane before it was made into the double room. And it was so tiny, and it was my great wish that we would have opportunity to have hospice. And so this is a dream coming true, that's for sure. And I'm so grateful for all that you do. Folks, I just want to open up this opportunity for questions right now that you might have to Dr. Kerri or to Lynn in regard to anything around palliative and hospice care here in our community. And just I'll remind you, if you're going to ask a question, just to unmute yourself before you start trying to talk. Well, you must have been so informative that you answered the questions. I'll ask Lynn, where would a person find any information that you had named? Is there a place that we can point them if they just needed more information around access, around what you've said?
I think for the most part would be to call the access center where, like home care, where the palliative care team is. And so if they call the access center, they can ask to talk to Tyler and Nadine, and they can explain and direct, I think, people the best. I think that would be. And yeah, and I've always been open, and I still get calls from people all the time kind of asking stuff. Yeah. So sorry, I was going to say, because outside of Heartland Hospice, Moose Jaw's website kind of explaining things like that. Yeah, there's limited information, I think, on the website for the access center.
So the phone number, what would the phone number be, Lynn?
It is 306-691-2090, I believe.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's just good to have. Awesome. And I also wanted to mention, you were talking about that little family room. Another thing within that family room is a little resource library.
Yes.
We have stocked and a good number of books that are in that library were donated by the Ackerman family in memory of Jackie Ackerman. And I see after we got started, I hadn't seen Donna, that you had joined us, and Donna Ackerman is also a member of our board. So hello to Donna as well. But yeah, we have a resource library that has children's books, helping understand the palliative journey, how to support, how to experience your own processing and grief. Just a real selection of books and resources. So just a reminder of that. And I also want to mention that on our Heartland Hospice website, we have all types of information around the supportive care area. We have information on palliative care processing, on end of life grief and loss, on then after death grief and loss, on journaling, on all different types of resources. And so it's a great place to visit, and that's on heartlandhospicemj.ca. So if there aren't any other questions, I'm going to just pause for a second just in case there are. All right, if there aren't any questions, I want to just update on some upcoming events with Heartland Hospice. We have got, as we said, our capital campaign that's ongoing. And if you go onto our website, you'll see pictures and designs of what we're imaging this to be. And we also have on May 1st to 7th, our Tim Hortons Smile Cookie campaign. On May 25th, we have our Heartland Hospice Black and White Gala fundraiser, and this year it's entitled Mighty Marin. Sorry, thought I could say this. Okay, though she be but little, she be mighty. And so, in memory of Marin Bradford, it's going to be a very precious, inspirational evening with music, and that's a fundraising event. And also, if you'd like to be added to our newsletter, there's a place on our website where you can register so that you can receive ongoing updates. And we also watch on our social media. We always have lots going on there. Sarah, do you have anything that you would like to add?
No, I would just like to thank all of you ladies for your time today. I'm still learning as I go too, and there's been some wonderful sharing that I really enjoyed. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Donna, anything from you as a board member?
No, I just want to echo everything that everybody else said. Access is so important to have the availability for the resources that are there.
Yeah, and you've been there, you've walked that, and seen the benefit of having that sacred space there. Yeah. Thanks, Donna. All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for being here, and I want to thank our presenters, especially to Dr. Kerri and Lynn for taking the time to be here and to share with us. And I know that if there's any questions, we can point them in their direction. If you have them, you can certainly email after. And so I'm going to close with these words. Ram Dass says, "We are all just walking each other home. It is our great hope that we can do so with compassion, with honor, with understanding, knowing that while we cannot change the outcome, we can affect the journey." So peace to each and every one of you. Thanks so much. Have a great day.